The purpose of these lessons is to show you the logic behind the most basic Chinese characters, beginning with the simplest pictograms, and later combining these elements to create more complex characters. There are 6 characters in today's lesson, 3 that were originally based on the full-form clothing radical yi, and 3 more that are not, but still pair nicely with those first 3. Our first character shows an animal hide, which was later reduced to the Han phonetic yo, plus tufts of fur on the left and right side to represent the original hide. Finally, to indicate the composition meant a fur coat, the clothing radical yi that once appeared above and below eventually moved to the bottom. The final result is pronounced second tone, qiu. This character is not particularly useful in itself, except in a few expressions referring to garments and accessories made of fur. Here are 3 examples. 小云昨天买了一件裘皮大衣和裘皮围巾. Xiao Yun bought a fur coat and a fur scarf yesterday. 有时间的话，我们想去看水貂裘皮加工厂. If we have time, we'd like to visit a mink fur factory. 我太太问我何时给她买裘皮大衣和镶宝石的耳环. My wife asked me when I'd buy her a fur coat and jeweled earrings. Apparently, during cold Chinese winters, those warm fur coats were much sought after, leading to the use of the hand plus fur element as a new character, meaning to pray for, to seek, beg, or plead. Also pronounced second tone, qiu. The clothing radical was deemed unnecessary and dropped altogether. This newly invented character, qiu, is far more useful than its predecessor, giving us the expressions 求人 and 有求于人, meaning to ask for favors. 我不点头哈腰，也不想求人. I don't bow and scrape, and I don't want to beg for favors. 我从来不求人，你知道为什么吗? Do you know why I never ask for favors? 很明显，你们来是有求于人的. It's obvious that you're here because you want something. 是因为有求于人，不然我从来不跟他来往. I need something from him. I wouldn't associate with him otherwise. 因为你有求于人，就不可以和他平起平坐. Since you want his help, avoid coming off as overly chummy. 平起平坐 is a new idiom meaning to be on an equal footing with someone, a reference to ancient Chinese etiquette, particularly the rituals of bowing and prostration, whereby those nobles who shared the same power and status followed the same protocols of rising, kneeling, and sitting during audiences with a king. Since it's new, here's another example of how to use it. 业主很亲切，一直跟我们平起平坐，从不搭架子. The owner is very friendly, always treating us as equals and never putting on airs. 搭架子, you'll recall from lesson 89, means to build a framework or erect scaffolding. One way to say to put on airs or to be arrogant and condescending. The phrase 求人 now changes to say who it is you're pleading with. 我求你，不要这样吵吵嚷嚷好吗? Would you please stop making such a racket? Literally, I'm begging you. 我要和你一起去，妈妈，求求你了. I want to go with you, Mom, please. 爸， 求求你相信我，我是为了大家好。Dad, please believe me. I'm doing this for everyone's benefit. The expression 求见 means to request an interview, or simply to ask to see someone. 他有急事求见大使。He has an urgent matter and needs to see the ambassador. 人们指点他求见的人，哪里也找不到。The person she was told to ask for was nowhere to be found. 求 is also used when praying in order to receive something. 出现旱灾的苗头时，古人会宰牛羊来求雨。At the first sign of drought, the ancients would pray for rain by slaughtering cattle and sheep. 父亲求子心切，母亲生怕跟他说生的是个女儿。The father was so eager to have a son that the mother was afraid to tell him it was a girl. 心切 is a shortened version of 心情迫切, meaning very anxious or eager for a particular outcome. Next we have an idiom, 求之不得, meaning something that's more than one could wish for. It's exactly what we've been looking for. It literally means to seek it, but not get it. 之 being the pronoun. 我若是不用再去那里，那真是求之不得。If I didn't ever have to go there again, that'd be fine with me. 要是您能来我家过个几天，真是求之不得。If you could come spend a few days at my house, that would be wonderful. 被指派到日本去工作，是我求之不得的机会。Being assigned to work in Japan is the opportunity I'd been hoping for. 要是他想要我的相机，他拿去吧，我还求之不得呢。If he wants my camera, he can have it. I've been wanting to get rid of it. 求生 means to try to remain alive, to survive. 求生是人的本能。Survival is a human instinct. 我就知道有一天我会用上求生包的。I knew one day I would need a survival kit. 班上的男生都想加入野外求生的活动。All the boys in the class wanted to join in on the wilderness survival activities. 求知 translates as to seek or pursue knowledge. 他把时间都花在求知上。He spends his time in the pursuit of knowledge. 他了解一个人必要生活，就必须要求知。She understood that to live, one must seek to learn. When we plead with someone, ask them to intercede on our behalf, the phrase to use is 求情. Notice the prepositions used. 为 for or on behalf of whom, and 向 the person of whom we are requesting the favor. 母亲为女儿向父亲求情. The mother spoke with the father in support of their daughter. 我会出面为你向他求情. I will intercede with him on your behalf. The phrase 求成 means to strive for success, as found in these two idioms, 利益求成 and 急于求成. 他利益求成 She was determined to achieve success. 利益 means to be determined, literally to establish one's intention. 不要急于求成，好事会在你意想不到的时候出现。Don't rush things. Good things will happen when you least expect them. 意想不到 means unexpected. 求精 means to strive for excellence. 求全 means to demand perfection or a complete and satisfactory result. 他对事业刻意求精 He is dedicated to excellence in his work. 无论办什么事情，他一定想求全。She always strives for perfection in everything she does. 他不在乎求精求全，什么事都草草了事。He doesn't care about perfection. He just does things in a perfunctory manner. 草草了事 You'll recall, means to do slipshod work, just enough to get by. 求新 means to seek innovation or advancement in a particular field. 在我眼中，新加坡人几乎事事求新。In my opinion, Singaporeans strive to innovate in almost everything they do. 本着求精技术求新的理念来创立我们的事业。We've built our business on the principle of pursuing excellence and technological advancement. 本着 means in accordance with or based on, literally rooted in. Now we come to 需求, a noun which translates as needs, requirements, or demand, as in supply and demand. 我的需求很少。My needs are minimal. 需求远远超过收入。My needs far exceed my income. 需求没有如我们想象的迅速增加。Demand hasn't increased as quickly as we expected. 如今对精通两种语言的员工的需求颇大。There's a significant demand for bilingual staff these days. 追求 is a verb meaning to pursue in the figurative sense. 我从不追求名利。I never pursued fame or fortune. 我不要让他想我是在追求他。I didn't want her to think I was chasing her. 大家追求的是世界上永久的和平。What we all pursue is lasting peace in the world. 依我看，他只是想追求他得不到的东西。In my opinion, she only goes after things she can't have. 他抛开了太太和儿女，去追求比他小2轮的女生。He left his wife and children to pursue a woman 24 years his junior. In Lesson 20, I introduced the 12 animals of the Chinese zodiac, called 12生肖, with each animal representing one of the 12 years of this cycle used for calculating dates. One cycle is 一轮, so 2轮 means 2 cycles, or 24 years. The most common expression for to demand or to request is 要求. Notice that 要 is pronounced first tone in this usage, not fourth tone. 他得到的比他要求的还多。She got more than she bargained for. 拍电影是个要求很高的工作。Filmmaking is a demanding job. 他好像不太合乎我们的要求。He didn't seem to meet our requirements. 银行的乡里不理会我们的要求。The bank's assistant manager ignored our request. 我们不能对他们的要求做出让步。We mustn't concede to their demands. 工人吵嚷着要求加薪，业主不予理会。The workers clamored for a pay raise, but the owner ignored them. To do one's best or to make every effort to achieve something is 力求, literally, to pursue with strength. 我们必须力求把技术现代化. We must endeavor to modernize our technology. 他不想跟他来往，而力求避开他. She doesn't want to associate with him and does her best to avoid him. Remember that Chinese does not have tenses, so you can translate using whatever tense fits the occasion. 对于他人的过失，他力求宽大为怀. He tries to be tolerant of others' mistakes. Notice the new idiom, 宽大为怀, meaning to be magnanimous or lenient with an offender. 我的一生力求于不要过像我父母辛苦的生活. I've spent my life trying not to live the same hard life as my parents. In Lesson 74, I introduced the character 予, representing a shuttle with a thread attached. It's usually pronounced third tone 予 and represents one hand passing the shuttle to the other hand during the weaving process. So it means to give. When pronounced second tone 予, however, it becomes a literary pronoun for first person singular, I or me. Literally, the giver, the one who gives to another. Due to a lack of vocabulary, I gave no examples at the time. Today, however, we have the idiom 予取予求 that requires this second tone pronunciation and connotation. Literally, it means I take whatever I want. But better English translations would include to do as one pleases, to make unlimited demands, or to allow someone to be given a free ride. 他对人予取予求，让人很烦. He makes constant demands of others, which is most annoying. 若对员工予取予求，到最后他们会辞去工作. Employees will eventually quit if you place too many demands on them. 朋友之间，若有一个人予取予求，关系就会破裂. If a friend's getting a free ride at your expense, that relationship will break down. 请求 is the most common expression to indicate a polite and respectful request. 他不好意思向我请求. He was embarrassed to ask me. 我是照您请求的办了. I did as you requested. 他的请求几乎像命令. Her requests are almost like orders. 他为他的宽恕请求. He asked her for her forgiveness. We learned 宽 in Lesson 78, meaning physically wide or broad, with the figurative meaning of generous or lenient. Now we have the most useful expression for forgiving or pardoning someone, 宽恕. As you can see, this new character is pronounced fourth tone 恕, composed of 如 from Lesson 17, plus the heart radical 心 underneath. 如, you'll recall, is composed of the kneeling woman next to a mouth, depicting a woman listening to and following a spoken order. By combining 如 as phonetic with the heart radical, it conveys the idea of a person listening to their heart, being generous and lenient when others make a mistake. In other words, to forgive or to pardon. 他因为年幼而被宽恕. He was pardoned because of his youth. 我不会宽恕你这个无赖。I will not forgive you, you scoundrel. 你对天主不敬的行为是得不到宽恕。Your disrespect for the Lord is unforgivable. 她不会因为她是女性就请求别人宽恕。She will not beg for forgiveness simply because she's a woman. 恕 is also used at the beginning of phrases as a polite way of saying something unpleasant which needs to be said. Similar to English, I'm sorry, but, or forgive my saying this, but. 恕不另行通知. This may change without further notice. This phrase often appears when announcing prices, tax rates, or other specifications. As you can see, the Chinese version begins with the polite formula, please pardon. 恕我直言，他活不久了。Pardon my bluntness, but he won't live long. 恕我指出，你讲的跟真相有出入。With all due respect, what you're saying differs from the facts. Literally, forgive my pointing this out. 恕我直言，这个计划只不过是幻想。If I may speak frankly, this plan is nothing but a fantasy. Before giving examples of our next phrase, let's review the character yang. In Lesson 43, I said that according to some etymologists, yang was an open space surrounded on three sides, with a man standing in the center, rather obviously indicating the center, if you look at the oracle bone pictograph. But when you review my slide for yang, you'll understand why other etymologists have a completely different interpretation, especially after seeing yang evolve into its final form. According to these etymologists, yang is in fact a wooden board with a hole in the center for petty criminals to wear as punishment and public humiliation. In English, it's called a kang. People wearing such devices were unable to reach their mouth because their hands were tied to it, and thus forced to beg for food or starve to death, which they often did. If you're curious, Wikipedia has old photographs taken in the late 18 and early 1900s when they were still used in China. I'll admit I was confused at first by one definition of yang, which is to beg or to plead. Now I understand that this connotation derives from the kang, this yoke on the neck of criminals, forcing them to beg for food or die. As I mentioned earlier, 请求 describes polite and respectful requests. Our next phrase then is 央求, which has more emotional force than 请求 and implies the person is trying to convince others, especially friends and family members, of one's deeply felt sincerity. Think of a child pleading for something he or she really wants, and you get the picture. 她用央求的目光看着爸爸. She looked at her father with pleading eyes. 她央求妈妈让他跟朋友去野外活动. He begged his mom to let him go with his friends on a field trip. 女儿一直央求我买那件象牙白毛衣给她. My daughter kept pestering me to buy her that ivory sweater. 她眼里含着泪，央求父亲不要生气. With tears in his eyes, he pleaded with his father not to get angry. In this example, I've introduced a new character meaning tears, pronounced fourth tone 泪, that fits in well with the idea of 求, meaning to beg or plead. As you can see on the slide, it's composed of the 3-drop water radical, shui, beside hu, meaning a door, with quan, the dog component underneath. This door plus dog phonetic is an uncommon character pronounced li, depicting a dog squeezing under a door. If you've ever watched a dog dig under a wall or fence and escape, you have an idea of what the character means. It means to bend, as that dog does, with extended meanings of crooked, deviant, and contrary. It's quite surprising sometimes how specific some of the actions the ancient Chinese chose to illustrate in their written language. Who would have ever thought to create a word for a dog squeezing under a door? But there it is. Li. Because this character is rarely heard, however, we're only concerned today with its use as the phonetic element in the character for tears, lei. Here are 4 examples. 他眼里含泪看着我. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. 他流着泪赶回家找妈妈. He rushed home in tears to his mother. 他坐在椅子上流着眼泪. She sat on a chair, tears streaming down her face. 她从来没看过爸爸眼中含泪. She had never before seen tears in her father's eyes. We encountered the word for a beggar, 乞丐, way back in Lesson 37. If we review the first character, 乞, we see that it started out as an ancient pictograph meaning to distribute rice to the homeless and needy. Eventually, the original mouth hovering over a steaming bowl of rice, 食, and the grains of rice, 米, were deleted, along with one horizontal stroke of the air radical, 气, to create third tone 起, with the opposite meaning, not to distribute rice, but to be on the receiving end. That is, the person who usually benefits from this sort of generosity, a beggar. With that little review, we can now introduce the phrase 祈求, meaning a person of low social status begging or pleading with a person above them socially. The 2 characters are sometimes found switched around as 求乞. 我不是来求乞的. I'm not here to beg. 他祈求国王宽恕他. He begged the king for mercy. 乞丐是以求乞为生. Beggars make their living by begging. 我在街上看见乞丐正在向人乞求. I saw panhandlers begging on the street. 他会流着眼泪祈求宽恕，是无法想象的. It's hard to imagine him pleading for forgiveness with tears in his eyes. 他不得不像个叫花子一样祈求我. He had to plead with me like a common beggar. 叫花子 is a new term here, meaning a beggar. To explain, we need to remember that 花, pronounced 4th tone 花, and sometimes 1st tone 花, is a pictogram of 2 persons, one upright and one reversed. This depiction of transformation is essential to Buddhist thought and applies to a Buddha's ability to transform their physical form in an effort to guide beings onto the righteous path, and also to convert people through teaching to guide them towards Buddhist salvation. On that path to transformation and salvation, Buddhist monks were, and still are, expected to beg for alms from passers-by, standing silently with lowered gaze while holding an empty bowl as a sign of humility. From that religious beginning in ancient times, the practice of begging was referred to as hua, or hua. The term 叫花子 arose because beggars would often use singing, storytelling, or other forms of performance to solicit alms. Hence the addition of 叫, meaning to call out or shout. Our final character today is another one that commonly pairs with 求 and is based on the long-form clothing radical 衣. As you can see on the slide, it's made up of a mouth inside the full clothing element, serving as the phonetic. It's pronounced first tone I and means to grieve or lament, to feel sorrow or pity. You may be able to guess that 哀求 is the strongest expression of the phrases with 求 because it means to beg pitifully, possessing no dignity at all, while pleading with a person of higher social status. 他用哀求的目光看着她. He gave her an imploring look. 我要回家. 他哀求着说. I want to go home, he whined. 我哀求我的叔叔向我母亲求情. I begged my uncle to intercede with my mother on my behalf. 他苦苦哀求，直到他不再生气. He pleaded earnestly with her until her anger subsided. Here is our color chart with today's 6 characters. 哀 求 恕 求 累 and 力. Here's a summary of today's lesson. 1. Of the 6 new characters in this lesson, 3 began as various combinations of the full-form clothing radical, 衣, the first of which was 求, depicting an animal's hide used as a fur coat. The only somewhat useful phrase was 裘皮大衣 for a fur coat. 2. The most useful character extracted from that fur coat pictograph was 求, meaning to pray for, seek, to beg or plead, ostensibly because everyone desperately wanted a fur coat during the cold winters. Expressions indicating seeking or requiring included 有求于人, 求人, 求予, 求子, 求见, 求之不得, 求生, 求知, 求情, 求成, 求精, 求全, 求新, 需求, 追求, 要求, 力求, 予取予求. Expressions indicating asking, requesting, or begging included 请求, 央求, 祈求, and哀求. 3. The 2 extra characters often used in conjunction with 求 are 泪 for tears and 恕 for forgiveness. 4. Be sure to remember the special tone changes, where 4th tone 要 changes to 1st tone in 要求, and 3rd tone 予 changes to 2nd tone 予, in the idiom 予取予求. Now you will find a short quiz on double, triple character, and longer expressions. Answer using only the characters learned so far. Thank you for watching and listening.